The Museum of Contemporary Art Denver and the Denver Center for the Performing Arts present Mixed Taste, tag team lectures on unrelated topics. And now, introducing tonight's unlikely pairing, Free Will and Zombie Deer. Please welcome tonight's host, Sarah by Charlie Miller.
We made it, Charlie.
We made it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mixed Taste. It's our last Mixed Taste of this summer season. Thank you for being here. I know, but it's got everything good must end.
Yeah,
I'm
nothing lasts
Charlie
forever.
Miller.
I'm Sarah Bai. I'm the Director of Programming at the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver.
And I'm the Executive Director of DCPA Off Center. We're happy to have you all here tonight.
And we are the curators of Mixed Taste, along with our co-host, who is not here, but is here in spirit, Brenton Zola, who also co-curated the season with us. And
we're happy to have all of you here in person in the Holiday Theater. And we say hello to those of you joining us online, streaming live. In order to have our in-person and virtual guests both participate in Mixed Taste at the same time, we have a second screen experience. Tell us about it, Sarah.
well, those of you who've been here a few times already should know how this works, but you will scan the QR code that you see here on the screen. Just hold your phone over that code, or you can go to slido.com and enter in Mixed Taste, all one word. And when you come up on that second screen, you should see 3 tabs where you can participate in a chat, you can take polls, or you can submit questions to the Q&A at the end of the show.
So scan that QR code, hop into the Ideas tab. Let's do a quick practice right now, and also we need your help. As you can see in Slido, we want suggestions for Mixed Taste topics for next summer. So here's your chance to share your best ideas with us. Let's see what we have here.
Oh,
You know, Hatch chilies and multiple orgasms would be a great Mixed Taste.
it's always good to know that your minds are right in the gutter. You got psychedelics, tennis shoe culture. That's popular. Historical Denver. Maybe, Dayla, can you scroll a little bit so we can see what else people are... Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Well, we got a lot of stuff coming
We got
in.
some good stuff.
Curling, there we go. There's a curling center right here in Denver. We are a home for all things curling. I think I can actually see some of the other things that are coming in here. Live polls right here.
Well, you get the hang
Sometimes
of
we
it.
can, sometimes you can't. Yeah.
So throughout the night, we will be asking for your participation through Slido, especially during the Q&A. So now you know how to do it. Thank you very much. And you can keep submitting your ideas throughout the night as well. We welcome them.
Naked parachuting.
So let's get started,
Let's
shall
do
we?
it. All right. Well, Mixed Taste is a mashup series where we bring together 2 experts who present on different topics, and then we take question and answer on both topics together
At the same time.
at the same time, ladies and gentlemen.
The rules are very simple. One speaker talks for 20 minutes. And the second speaker speaks on a completely unrelated topic for 20 minutes. During the first portion of the evening, no connections are allowed to be made between the 2 topics. But during the Q&A, anything can happen.
Yes. Between the talks tonight, we're going to play a quick game, and at the end of the evening, we will invite a poet to tie the whole night together by composing a live poem on the spot. So
let's introduce our first speaker, who will be talking about free will. Robert Bridge is a statistician for the state of Colorado. His interests include running, cycling, jokes, and excusing his past mistakes by claiming free will doesn't exist. Please welcome Robert Bridge.
All right, philosophy. Oof, very serious stuff. What is philosophy? I don't know. Oh, but I heard this podcast called No Stupid Questions, and the host said that philosophy is using tools that come naturally to a lawyer to answer questions that come naturally to a child. Yeah, I thought that was funny too. I don't know what it means, but it's pretty funny. The same podcast, funny enough, cited a study that said if you're single and you're dating, this is a very serious study, peer-reviewed, double-blind, and it said if you're single and you're dating and you meet someone who is a philosophy major or interested in philosophy or in a philosophy book club, that you should run. It was part of the study. Anyway, speaking of dating, let's talk about psychopathy. Part 1. This is Charles Whitman. In 1966, Charles Whitman committed one of the worst mass murders in US history. He first killed his wife and his mother, stabbing them both in the chest. Then he went to the University of Texas the next morning, and he brought a small arsenal with him, climbed a tower, and shot randomly at people for 2 hours. He killed 14 people and wounded 34. The only end came when the police shot and killed him. So we can think of him kind of as the quintessence of evil, right? He's a real a-hole, Charles Whitman. But the story doesn't end there. So interestingly enough, he left a suicide note, and in it, he detailed that his behavior started to change a few months back. Started with headaches and some physical ailments, and then he started noticing he had very violent thoughts and urges, and he actually loved his wife and his mother, but was feeling these violent urges to kill them. Can you imagine violent urges to kill your own loved one? Crazy, right, babe? But really, so he said that came a couple months before, and then he urged that whoever's reading it, please study his brain. He swore something was wrong with his brain. And so the people who do that sort of thing did study his brain, and they found a tumor in his amygdala pressing on the region, and the people who know about this sort of thing said that this could account for violent behavior of the sort that Charles Whitman enacted, which is strange, right? It kind of brings about these questions, like, is free will motivating the kind of violent behavior that Charles Whitman enacted if a tumor is pressing on a violent part of your brain and causing that? What would any of you do if you had a tumor in the same spot? Would you feel violent urges? Can we even say that he's the quintessence of evil anymore? It feels weird, right? Can we even say he's an a-hole because of the tumor? Interestingly, I like to think about if the police hadn't killed him, would he still deserve to be locked up? And even if he didn't deserve it, would we still want him locked up? Brings us to the second part, lust for vengeance. It reminds me of this subreddit called justice porn. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's these stories and videos of bad actors getting their comeuppance in these like really satisfying ways. It's like so fun to watch. In like my meaningless life, I never experienced more meaning and satisfaction as watching someone get like punched in the face who really deserves it, or locked up when they really deserve it. But in this case, I can imagine Charles Whitman getting shot by police and really feeling this like satisfaction about it. But then the next scene of the video shows that he had a tumor, and it totally ruins my justice porn hard-on, because like, what does that mean anymore? I'm not satisfied in the same way. It's kind of a strange thing. Reminds me of another story of Jared Diamond's father-in-law. Jared Diamond, the same guy who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, his father-in-law was a survivor of the Holocaust. He came back after the war to find that his family was killed by a Nazi in his village in Poland. And the Nazi was still there. The man responsible for killing his family was living in the village with him. And Jared Diamond's father-in-law, he has a name, I can't remember it, He struggled with the feeling of vengeance. He really wanted to just kill this Nazi, but he decided that maybe his prefrontal cortex kicked in, and he realized that maybe it's best to move on in a more responsible way, and he told the authorities. There was a trial, and maybe because of lingering anti-Semitism in Poland, the Nazi only got 1 year of time for killing his entire family. Jared Diamond's father-in-law said at the end of his life that for the next 60 years after that trial, he lived in regret and guilt and was tortured by the fact that he didn't kill this man himself, and instead, the man got off with 1 year. His lust for vengeance was kind of ruined in this case. But I wonder if it's not the attribution of free will that caused that suffering for Jared Diamond's father-in-law. If cholera had killed his family, maybe the same initial grief would be experienced, but would he spend the next 60 years living in guilt and regret, wishing he had killed that cholera? It doesn't really make sense, does it? Or maybe a hurricane, the same thing, maybe even a bear. So he attributes free will to the Nazi and suffers from that vengeance lust because of this belief that the Nazi could have done otherwise. But could they? It's interesting to think of the Nazi like we think of Charles Whitman. Maybe we could think of the Nazi as having a swastika-shaped tumor in their brain. Would that change anything? Or can we think of the Nazi that way? Oh, this is a turkey I saw in Denver. It's the pet turkey of these people. It was just in their yard. Isn't that funny? Next up, the homunculus. Homunculus is Latin for little person, not the PC thing to call them. And it's this idea that there's a little person behind your eyes looking out through your eyes and controlling your every move, your every thought. And we all have it. It's a kind of thought or a sensation that we have, that there's this little person, and they're in control of moving our arms or thinking our thoughts or making our choices. For you, your homunculus might be thinking, why is he wearing those stupid pants? Does he lack personality and he needs to make up for it? Screw your homunculus. I lost my place because I'm angry. The point is the homunculus is an illusion. It doesn't exist. We all have it strongly. Maybe it's even a delusion, but it's not there. There's no little man behind your eyes controlling everything you do. It's just meat. It's brain meat. And brain meat is a physical system determined by the laws of physics. That's what this talk is about, free will. Before I go into this, there's an interesting thing called Hitchens' razor, named after Christopher Hitchens. It says that what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. I think free will and the homunculus fall in this category, but I'll be gracious enough to still try to provide some evidence that free will doesn't exist here tonight. Free will is the other side of the same coin of the homunculus. They're both this kind of illusion that everyone kind of has, but once you grant that the brain is just a physical system, and everything you do, think, say, feel is from the brain and from the physical system, then there's no room for free will any longer. The laws of physics don't permit it. Everything is determined by cause and effect, including all the molecules, chemicals, atoms in your brain. Where can free will fit into this? Where can the molecules decide to go left instead of right? That doesn't make sense. Molecules go where other molecules hit them to go. It's hard to see. Of course, the brain It's the most complex machine in the known universe, and we have no idea how it works. But it doesn't seem like there's any space for free will still. It's grim, I know. But we're getting grimmer, because now it's time for the most disturbing and uncomfortable part of this talk. Oh, well, not that. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the cool outcomes that happens to come from not believing in free will. It's not all grim. If your enemy couldn't have done otherwise, is it easier to forgive them? I feel like it is. If you spend your time like Jared Diamond's father-in-law thinking that they should have done otherwise and couldn't, you can suffer for a long time. But forgiveness comes easily. Look at these people, especially when they're, young, attractive, kind of old-timey. People are easy to forgive. And these are people that are enjoying their vacation being guards at Auschwitz. Okay, so forgiveness isn't that easy. And fuck these Nazis. Okay? And the stupid accordion. But there's still interesting things to talk about the criminal justice system. The famous anthropologist Robert Sapolsky talks about this car analogy. He says, if we have a car whose brakes are failing, we try to first fix the brakes, which would be, rehabilitation. And if we can't fix the brakes, we take the car off the road. We don't want to endanger other people or the other cars. And if people are just biological systems and machines just like cars, maybe we could think of the criminal justice system similarly. We don't want Nazis on the streets necessarily, even if it's just their Nazi brains. Okay, so philosophers talk about Nazis too much. That's like a common thing. I'll move on. Ego and pride. So forgiveness is hard. Forgiving others, okay, maybe we can scrap that. But what about forgiving yourself? The regrets that you might have don't make much sense if you could never have done otherwise. If I wish I had done A instead of B, but that's impossible in a world with no free will, then do you feel regret? Maybe not. It's easy to let yourself off the hook, which you heard in my intro, I'm pretty good at. Pride is similar. Does it make sense to be proud of anything you've done if there's no free will? Not really. I think pride kind of drops away when there's no free will. I could think of past accomplishments, but if there was no freedom to not have done those accomplishments, then why am I proud of them? And I think ego and pride, I think we can all agree, are only bad things. So the dropping away of ego, the dropping away of pride, the dropping away of regret, these are all positive things that can come from dropping the belief in free will. So I hope that happens to all of you, but if you choose for it not to happen, I don't blame you. There was no choice in the matter. It's just a matter of luck, really. I hope you're all lucky enough to not believe in free will. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And now,
It's halftime.
it's halftime. Feel free to get up and grab a drink if you need one. We're going to take a little break, play a little game. Sarah and Mike are going to set this up. For this game, we're going to need your participation. And here's the QR code again, if you need it, to get into Slido. And now I'd like to welcome tonight's poet to join us for the game. Please welcome Franklin Cruz. Franklin, welcome. So one of my favorite mixed taste traditions that we've created over the past couple of years is when we literally mix tastes. And so today we have another terrible food game that we like to call Mixed Taste Skewer. So here's how it's going to work. Sarah and Franklin are going to make 2 different skewers, and you, the audience, will vote to determine which one I eat. A skewer will contain 4 elements. We have proteins. It will contain a protein, a vegetable or fruit, a cheese, and a sauce. So, Sarah, can you please introduce us to the ingredients you have to work with tonight?
Yes, so we have some delicious ingredients that can be combined in many different ways. We have some shrimp. This is cocktail shrimp. We have a boiled egg. We have turkey jerky, which is not usually found on a skewer, but maybe that's,
That's
an
okay.
oversight.
I can do that.
We have a fresh crab leg here.
I'll just note that these proteins on their own, I would be very excited to eat any of them.
Yes, I believe that, Charlie. I think you might be willing to eat almost anything. Then over here in the fresh vegetable section, we have some things that are vegetables, some things that stretch that definition maybe just a little bit.
Like a tad bit.
We've got some delicious peppers. It's pepper season, so these are fresh. And
Spicy?
I believe that they are, but
Okay.
they didn't have a Scoville rating on them, so we'll see.
Great.
Great.
Then we've also got some dolmas, which are stuffed grape leaves.
Not a vegetable, but
you
that's
know.
right.
We've got some olives, delicious green olives, and fresh figs. So many fresh vegetables right now. Really, Charlie's in for a treat. No, but most deliciously, we have a selection of fine cheeses from the Whole Foods. So we've got this one is a Sparkenho red.
I think you did great.
Yeah, it's a delicious yellow cheese. And then we have here a Gorgonzola Dolce,
I like that cheese. That's a good cheese.
which
Pungent.
sounds delicious. And then we have a promontory cheddar, which is, I believe, a cheddar that has gone to a very good high school.
Excellent.
And then finally over here we have, last but certainly not least, an aged mimolette.
Yeah.
Which
That one
is,
looks like a gemstone.
it looks like
It's
a gemstone.
not what you want in a cheese.
And it probably goes great.
Would it be
with
appropriate
so
if I
many of
smell
things.
these?
Please
Great.
smell away from
I'm surprised that maybe all of you can't smell them. It's certainly
And then what are our
backstage.
sauces this evening?
Sauces come straight from my refrigerator at home. So we have a kimchi, delicious.
Love a good
We have a sriracha, delicious and becoming more rare, I'm
Yeah,
told.
there's a shortage.
This is a barbecue sauce that comes from Kansas City, so it's imported. And then finally, we have the finest Safeway Signature Reserve steam-crafted bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup for the kids.
All right.
And then, just as a bonus sauce, we have some packets of mayonnaise because everybody loves mayonnaise.
Okay, so I just want to point out that there's some very delicious combinations here that I would look forward to eating. If you can both make your skewers now quickly, and then we will let the audience vote on which skewer I
Do
will
you have a
eat.
preference?
So
You
you
go
get one
first.
protein, you get one vegetable, one cheese, and then a sauce on top.
All right, I'm definitely.
Does it have to
All right,
look pretty?
Franklin's putting a shrimp on. I like
I mean,
this.
why not?
I'm
And
going-
Sarah's got, what is that?
This is the Gorgonzola
The Gorgonzola Dolce.
Let's put a...
Shrimp and an olive for Franklin.
No,
All
that's
right.
not actually a good idea. What am I doing?
We've got a hot pepper coming on Sarah's skewer.
Well, it's a pepper of questionable heat, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'm going to do the similar thing.
Okay.
Okay,
and-
shrimp, hot pepper. Oh,
I'm
okay.
winging
Franklin
this,
swapped.
and
Both
you-
have hot peppers now.
Oh,
Oh, he's adding 2 proteins. That's not allowed, but we'll go with it.
Oh,
Sarah's going with a boiled egg. Gorgonzola, chili pepper, boiled eggs.
all right. And then I've got
Franklin's
my plate.
got an olive in there too.
I
and,
appreciate you so much for
And
doing
now
this.
he's going with the well-educated cheddar.
I don't know. Do I want the maple syrup, the barbecue sauce?
I heard maple syrup for you.
I heard maple syrup too.
What goes on this?
I think
Mayonnaise? That's so rude. That's so rude. We'll do some
Sorry, Charlie.
barbecue. I heard a yeah.
Okay.
Oh man.
All right. The skewers are being finished. Franklin is lathering on the Kansas City sauce.
Charlie is really the nicest guy, so this
He
feels
really
like
is.
just the
So you're
worst.
just putting the sauce on one element, Franklin.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Cheese deserves to stand on
Okay,
its own.
so now let us introduce what your dishes are, and you audience can
And I
vote.
will say, you should pull up on your phone because you, the audience, will get to vote for my concoction or Franklin's. So what have you got on yours, Franklin?
So I got the, which fellow was this?
I think it was the-
promontory. That's not the word. I got a good cheese,
Yeah,
an
good
olive,
cheese and a good
some
score.
barbecue shrimp, and a non-Scoville leveled pepper.
We don't
Okay.
know that.
Yeah, that's what I got.
And I've got, and I feel terrible about this, but I've got the sweet blue cheese. I've got, I also have a hot pepper. So you're getting a hot pepper either way.
Okay, I can handle that.
And I've got a boiled egg, and it's got some syrup on it. So whose skewer should you eat?
So it's a close race. If you haven't voted,
Oh,
you can
that's
still
so
vote for
rude.
Franklin's. That would be great. But
Yeah.
I think that the audience has spoken. I will accept my lack of free will.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, Charlie.
Wow.
Real sorry about that. These are for food sanitary
This
reasons.
is so huge, I don't even know how I can eat it in
Are you
one bite.
required to finish it?
No, but I've got to be able to get everything in one bite, I think.
Mm.
Okay, Sarah, your skewer portion size is really terrible. All right,
That's
here
fair.
goes a maple syrup covered egg with blue cheese and a pepper.
No, I'm
Actually-
witnessing this.
You know, it might not be that bad. A lot of people eat eggs with syrup. That's a thing.
No.
Oh, wait.
No.
Wait.
No.
Just to prove,
No.
to
Yeah.
prove we're not horrible, here, enjoy some
You
delicious,
did that.
delicious water.
You did that.
I can report that the pepper is not spicy,
That's good.
I guess.
and the rest is really horrible. Thank you, audience.
Thanks for playing along. Well, I think you should eat that.
That is a very pungent gorgonzola. Thank you, Franklin. We'll look forward to your poem later. Thank you,
Bye, all.
Sarah.
Yes.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you, audience. All right, that was fun. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our second guest tonight, who's going to be talking to
And
you
now,
about
on with the show.
On with the show. And now I'll be introducing our second guest, who's going to be talking to us all tonight about zombie deer. Sam Brasch is a wild climate and entertainment reporter at Colorado Public Radio News, where he covers wildlife, air quality, and the built environment. He was born in Denver. Anyone else here born in Denver by round of applause? Welcome home, everyone. Well, and he's never really found a good reason to leave, like the rest of us here. Outside of radio reporting, he's had brief stints teaching middle school and English in Brazil, and he got his start in journalism writing clickbait articles about farm animals, which we probably have all read. So please give a warm welcome to Sam Brasch.
All right, can you guys hear me? Sweet. Thank you guys for coming tonight. As you heard, my name is Sam Brasch. I'm a climate and environment reporter here at Colorado Public Radio News in Denver. Thank you. I'm a fan too. I'm not a member because I work for them, but I am a fan. I want to tell a story tonight about probably the biggest mistake I've ever made in my journalistic career. About 4 years ago, I filled your imaginations, the public's imaginations, with images of rabid, furious, bloodthirsty zombie deer. And I think the story of how that happened actually raises some bigger questions about a pretty big journalistic superpower that we don't talk about often enough. All right, so all journalists, including me, we want to make an impact. And when we say that, we usually mean we want to reveal some truth about the world that people don't know or they haven't fully realized or taken account of. There's all sorts of examples of famous investigative journalists doing this. Obviously, Woodward and Bernstein revealing Watergate and taking down a president. Ida B. Wells showing the nation or trying to show the nation the horrors of lynching, and her reporting is some of the only ways we know about what really happened. People like Upton Sinclair, who brought us into slaughterhouses and showed us the horror of what was happening to animals, to workers, and also to our food. But that's just the power to reveal. There's also the power to name stuff. And naming stuff is a pretty big deal. You can think of all kinds of examples of this, right? Like the Great Bambino, that's Babe Ruth. Slam dunk is something a journalist came up with. Whodunit, Middle America, Watergate, The Big Lie with Trump. That's something journalists came up with. And fun stuff as well, like Bradgelina. Can you guys think of any others? I'm sure I'm missing some. Just shout them out. I don't care. Bannifer's good. Give me one more. Manifest Destiny. That's it, really. Is that really a journalist? Wow. I should have had that on the list. All right. Okay, so back in 2018, I had an assignment to cover something called chronic wasting disease. Chronic wasting disease is a cousin of mad cow disease, but it doesn't affect cows. It affects a category of animals called ungulates, which I would really recommend saying as often as you can. This is deer, elk, moose, all sorts of stuff like that. And what it does is it slowly eats away at their brain, destroys their nervous systems, and it acts over a series of years. So they lose the ability to eat, then to drink water, then to walk, and then eventually they die. Now, luckily for us, there's something called the species barrier. This is a prion disease, which means it's not a virus or a bacteria. The thing behind this doesn't even have a genetic code. It's just a protein. It's a building block of life, and it, for some reason, forces other proteins around it to kind of take the same shape. So it is contagious, but it's very slowly contagious. Right now, those prions only circulate among these ungulates, among deer, elk, and moose. But we know from really messed up experiments that it can affect other species sometimes. If you take these affected prions and you inject them into the nervous systems of cows or weasels or monkeys, they can develop chronic wasting disease too. Back in 2018, I got this assignment because there was this Canadian study that found monkeys could get chronic wasting disease not from an injection, but just from eating a lot of infected deer brains and nerves and stuff like that. And we can have a whole other discussion about the ethics of experiences like that, because it's super messed up. But that whole thing was like, all right, we should do a story about this. We should look into this because, chronic wasting disease is really prevalent in Colorado. And so I said, chronic wasting disease is boring, though. We shouldn't call it chronic wasting disease. Nobody wants to read about that. Let's call it zombie deer disease. That'll get a lot more attention. And I really went for it. I somehow talked my editor into this. And here's the article we ran back in 2018. Could Colorado's zombie deer disease ever spread to humans? Paired with this lovely photo of a skinned deer head at a wildlife testing facility up in Fort Collins that I checked out. And, it did very well, I'm glad to say. So, all right, so what we're looking at with this graph is Google searches for zombie deer. And initially, it wasn't a huge hit. So if you look on the left, there's that tiny little blip. That's me, right? Right there. And this is huge for me, right? Like, I'm a local public radio reporter. If I'm showing up at all in global Google Analytics searches, I'm doing great. And then it kind of dissipated. I kept writing about politics and air quality and stuff, and I do a lot of fun stuff. And then a year later, back when zombie deer is back in the news, because it usually people are talking about it in the fall during hunting season, the New York Post ran a similar article with the same headline. Thank you, Mr. Robert Murdoch. And then it just went totally nuts. And everybody, looked back over time, who was the first guy to use it? And it was me. Thank you. So this is when I started checking back in with my sources, because they were kind of upset previously, and now they were really, really upset. This is a guy by the name of Matt Dunphy. He works up in Fort Collins for the Chronic Wasting Disease Alliance. It's literally his job just to teach people about this thing and how to deal with it. And right off the bat, when I called him, I could tell he was pretty upset because this headline had caused some issues for him.
This headline, what effect does it have on you and your life?
It means I spend a lot more time on email than I want to. This is a title that incites fear. And anybody who knows what it's like to manage fear knows that when you don't respond quickly, competently, and calmly, that fear only builds.
Okay, so this is when I realized this guy wanted to wring my fucking neck. He's a really nice guy. He's a real sweetheart. And his whole thing is he just wants people to get into the outdoors, to hunt, to fish, to hike. That's what he is entirely about. And I did realize how mad he was later when he told me about a recent conference he went to, and he said he and his buddies got drinks literally to talk about just how much I sucked and how much this headline had ruined their life. And, justice for them was calling me a series of names.
The insults being hurled in my general direction.
So without swearing, yes,
Yeah.
idiot, stupid, poorly trained, irresponsible. That pretty much covers the suite of. Or here's another: attention-seeking.
Right? Matt, man, come on, lay off. At this point, I thought, this is kind of unfair, all right? Like, at the end of the day, I wrote a popular article. I showed a lot of people and taught a lot of people chronic wasting disease. And I tried in that moment to make a really poor case for a scary name. And I'm going to walk you through that right now. Because I think generally attention is a good thing. And I don't think I was totally off base in calling it some kind of zombie deer disease. To understand why, I think you got to go back to where this thing started. What we're looking at here is a picture of a wildlife research facility managed by the state up in Fort Collins. This is where scientists first observed chronic wasting disease back in the 1960s, but they didn't even know what they were looking at. There were deer and elk in this facility that just slowly wasted away, so they took them out of the facility, they saw it spread to other facilities, and they slaughtered all the deer, put new deer in there. Those deer died of the same disease. They slaughtered all those deer, and then they even took, they cleaned the whole thing, they bleached the whole thing, they took out a layer of dirt, put new deer in there. They got the disease, and it took them a long time to finally figure out what this is before they identified those prions we were talking about earlier. So it has this sort of weird, vaguely governmental origin story, which sort of sounded to me like a zombie movie, right? I thought that fit. Also, this thing has spread slowly but surely all around the world. This is a map of the places it's spread to, both in wild deer populations and in captive deer populations. It's also now in Norway, Russia, I think South Korea as well. And it's really mysterious how this is happening. It's not always clear that deer and elk are spreading this from one place to another. It might be appearing spontaneously. It might be in the soil. Like we talked about, these are just lifeless building blocks. So they don't really have the same patterns of other diseases, which I was like, well, that's kind of freaky. That's kind of like a horror movie. That's kind of like a zombie movie. As I mentioned before, it eats your brain. These are two slides. On the left, you'll see an uninfected slide of a deer brain. On the right, you can just see the holes that have opened up. Again, it's eating your brain. It's a zombie disease. How many more points do I have to make here? And I wasn't on my own with this. During my reporting, I also talked to this really smart guy named Mark Zabel. He's one of the top prion experts in the world, and he has really put a lot of attention into chronic wasting disease. And he told me before, unprompted, this is just him, they truly walk around like a zombie. And I was like, oh, zombies, that's immediately interesting. This assignment is way cooler than I thought it was. On top of that, we have our freaky deer head friend, and I was like, that's weird. That should justify this a little bit. But also, this testing is really important. The state asks hunters to turn in their deer heads because they want to be sure it doesn't have chronic wasting disease before anybody eats him, right? Makes a lot of sense. It also helps the state track this disease across wherever it is, across the state. But those rates weren't happening enough, and they really wanted more hunters to do it. So I thought, if I choose a really scary, clickbaity name, maybe I can bring attention to this thing. Maybe more people will follow the rules and do the right thing. And so I was like, yeah, what the heck? This is how the testing process works. It's pretty cool. It's no big deal. They suck some fluid out of the deer's lymph nodes. It's super easy. They test it, and then you get your results about chronic wasting disease. The other thing looming all over this for me that I was thinking about, don't worry, they're not eating deer brain. They're not. This is something different. Is mad cow disease, which everybody's heard of mad cow disease. Mad cow disease is a terrifying name. And it's also the biggest food scandal ever, maybe in the world, especially hit the UK. Back in the 1980s, they discovered mad cow disease. They discovered it was infecting cattle around the UK, and they identified prions again as the cause. This was, again, really weird. A bunch of scientists were trying to figure out what was going on. And in the meantime, the government was insisting British beef is safe. This is Margaret Thatcher's agriculture secretary eating a hamburger with his 4-year-old daughter to prove that British beef was no problem, you're going to be fine. And I think most people have a vague idea of where the story went from there. People started developing a really horrible neurological condition called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, where they slowly lost their memory. It looked like early onset Alzheimer's, and then similar to chronic wasting disease or mad cow disease, they lost their motor function, they lost the ability to drink water, to eat, to breathe, and they slowly died. This was all revealed later in the 90s, and the British government had to do a huge mea culpa, obviously. I don't think it would have been as big of a deal if it was the normal name for this disease, which is bovine spongiform encephalopathy, I think. Something like that, which just isn't as good. It's not as scary, it's not as attention grabbing. I think mad cow disease, while it's a little ableist, probably not the best thing, we probably want to do that again, brought attention to the disease and the scandal, which I think was important in that particular entrance. But this might sound crazy, guys. I generally think that journalists should not name diseases. And I'm not alone in this. The WHO has been thinking about this since COVID-19, and they actually recently put out a set of guidelines about what not to do when naming a disease. Basically, the concern is that if you do a wrong name, a bad name that sort of names a place or a person or a group of people, you run all sorts of huge risks. You could stigmatize a disease, you could stigmatize a group of people, you could make it less likely for people to seek medical care. And here are some pretty tame examples of that, right? Middle East respiratory syndrome, we think about a place when it spread all across the world. The Spanish flu, the flu that infected almost the entire globe during World War I, didn't even originate in Spain, and it's associated with Spain, so that's not great. Bird flu, swine flu, monkeypox is really front of mind right now for everybody. And there are some critics who think monkeypox, it just conjures up the wrong images. Maybe it makes people think of Africa, and that's bad. We don't want that to happen. It could stigmatize the disease and stigmatize getting care. And these are the really tame examples. We need to remember that AIDS was really initially called gay-related immune disorder. And it's easy to see how harmful that was to an entire generation of people. Maybe it helps explain why the US government and all governments were so slow to respond to that pandemic. And then even more recently, we know about President Trump's attempt to call COVID-19 the China flu, which inspired hate crimes all across the country. So disease naming is not something to take lightly. What scientists say they should do, and what journalists should just report on, is describing something in a way that just tells you what the disease is, what it does to your body, how bad it is. Something a lot like, I realized then, chronic wasting disease, which is pretty good and pretty straightforward. But still, as I was thinking about this whole reaction and all this blowback I was getting, I was like, but this isn't a human disease. This doesn't have the same issues. It's not as bad. I don't know. It was a good article. Give me a break. I talked to Matt again, and he really got me thinking about what he sees as a very prominent trend in our society, was that we keep talking about the outdoors as something to be afraid of. There's always something out there that's going to get you. Is it a bear? Is it a storm? Is it a scary person who's out there hiding in the woods? Is it a zombie deer? And he said that I, maybe unconsciously, maybe consciously, put that together too, and I capitalized on it. I said, I'm going to use this for myself. I'm going to scare people. And I didn't think about making them afraid of the outdoors, but that's what I was essentially doing. He's very adamant. That is not the deal with chronic wasting disease. deer do not become zombies. This is his like big point. And it's true. It's true. But even beyond that, you can deal with it. There are steps you can take to avoid the risk.
This disease, you're not going to get it from watching wildlife. You're not even going to get it from handling wildlife. If you're a hunter, even if this disease we find one day in some form or another, it is possible for it to transmit to humans. Just handling the carcass won't do it. You would have to ingest probably significant portions of the infectious material. So
You'd
what
have
would
to
be
eat
great
a
for
deer brain, basically.
Right, well, exactly. And that generally isn't a thing we do anyhow.
It's not. It's not. All right, so what have I been doing about all this since then? Since the whole zombie deer thing, I've stopped using it in headlines, I've stopped using it in articles, but I've kept reporting on chronic wasting disease, and I've tried to do it in a way that doesn't instill fear, but gets people thinking about, like, what can I actually do about this? And what can we collectively actually do about this? That's been really cool reporting. One of the things I love to talk about is wolf reintroduction. That's kind of just like part of my job. I like own the wolf beat at CPR, and we're the first state to vote to reintroduce wolves, and we can talk all about that too. But one of the probably best arguments for reintroducing wolves, better than like wolves saving rivers or anything like that, is what it could do about chronic wasting disease. Because wolves eat weak deer and elk. That's what they do. And maybe chronic wasting disease is actually a side effect of unbalanced ecosystems, of a lack of top predators that are there to take out weaker animals, and that's why it spread so successfully around the globe. I thought that was such a cool idea. But there's the problem, even doing that, even doing the good reporting, that zombie deer disease is just out there. They are out in the world. And when it comes to that, that's where I really want to enlist your help, because we got to talk about, you know, what it really means, what it really is. And if zombie movies have taught us anything, it's that, you know, you can't fight them alone. You got to fight these fuckers together. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sam. That was great. I enjoyed that. All right, we're going to bring up both of our speakers, and we're going to take questions on both topics at the same time. So go ahead. Here's our QR code again for you. Pull up your phones, and you can start sending in your questions. And I'm going to invite Robert back to the stage, and Sam back to the stage as well. And I've got also, Mike is bringing out for me our gong. And as you know, if you have attended a mixed taste in the past, if you ask a crossover question, we will make this pleasant noise, which is nice. And it's a nice way to celebrate that you've made a connection between our topics. All right, I can't wait to see where this is going to go, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up our questions tonight. The first question that came in, even before Sam had finished talking, was about your shirt, Robert. So as my slide was populating over here, would you care? Is this someone asked, is it a Mystic Pizza reference? Is this a Julia Roberts?
Oh, it's not. It's actually Pizza John. It's John Green, the author of The Fault in Our Stars and YouTube Celebrity. Look him up. He's a cool guy. I don't know why it says pizza.
It's great. All right. So Larry asks, and I will go ahead and say, if you would like to be eligible to win tonight's prize, just go ahead and write your name at the top of your question when you submit it, and then you will be eligible for a fabulous prize at the end of the night. All right. Larry asks, if genetics and experience are the causes of your actions in the absence of free will, shouldn't your parents get tonight's speaking fee?
But that suggests that they're responsible for something, but they also didn't have free will, so they don't deserve anything. You know? And so if I'm lucky enough to get the speaking fee, if there's one, then, you know, I don't think it would be arbitrary for it to go to them and not someone else's parents.
All right. Bebo asks, whose will is it that Sam scares people enough about chronic wasting disease to promote action? And now the Slido was not without its faults. So Bebo's question has just popped down. Maybe Charlie can pull it back up for me here to the top of the screen. We're just gonna, here we go. Do some deer, Bebo asked 2 questions. This is a different question, but we're gonna roll with it. So do some deer become zombies because of luck or chance?
Well, technically, no deer are zombies. That was the main point.
I think that's what we learned tonight. Don't let journalists name diseases. If you take one thing away from tonight's talk.
But if a deer were to become a zombie, I think especially you couldn't blame the deer. I mean, that definitely isn't the deer's fault. I'm not even sure if I'm on board with no free will, but in that particular case, it seems pretty clear-cut that if you become a zombie, you're usually like, there's a reason you haven't chosen to be a zombie. No. Right?
Anything to add, Robert?
Yeah. If the universe is completely deterministic, then from the Big Bang, that deer was determined to become a zombie. And so whose fault is it really?
But he wasn't determined to be a zombie by the deer himself.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just the laws of physics.
Yeah.
Philosophy. All right, so we've got another question from Marisa. If a zombie deer wandered into traffic and causes an accident, would we hold it liable for damages? What am I doing? I haven't been gonging any of them. We have like 3 incoming gongs. That's Risa's and then like 2 more for the past questions. Oh. So zombie deer wanders into traffic and causes an accident. Who is liable for damages?
That's a tricky
I think
one.
it's a free will question, but
Well, yeah. I think this is an interesting question because you have to assess, do animals have free will at all, right? So zombie deer or regular deer, did it have the conscious ability to choose whether to enter the street in the first place? And I know you don't believe in free will, but that might be a place you could draw a line.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
It reminds me of the car analogy too. It's can we blame the deer? Whose fault is it? We might want to think about what might different types of retributive justice for deer might not make sense in this case. So it's a tough question, maybe for lawyers.
Yeah, like deer restorative justice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack there. All right, SP asks, is there any philosophical difference between the concept of the zombie and the concept of the human absent free will?
See, I say,
Yeah.
yeah, good question. There's outward behavioral differences, but I don't see why there would be a difference as far as the ability to choose. But obviously there are behavioral changes from changes in the brain. But, what do you think about this?
I mean, you believe all humans are zombies.
And all zombies are humans.
Right, yeah. So it doesn't really matter. But I would say in general that is probably what's so terrifying about the idea of zombies to us, is the idea of I would say especially mass numbers of human beings without free will that are, seeking our brains without any conscious thought. That's the idea.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting distinction. Do zombies have conscious thought? Is the light on, so to speak, or the light off? If the light's off, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And can we assume anyone's light is on? All you really know is your own.
I think you're being a little coy. Like, do you actually think people don't have free will?
Honestly, yeah. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think that, yeah.
What if you ask them about it and they say they do?
And they say they do?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're under the delusion.
They're under an illusion.
He came here with friends tonight, Sam. We saw it.
Yeah, I know. He is all in. I don't know what I can do about this.
Yeah. I don't blame them for it.
Okay, so if you were to ask a zombie if he or she had free will, and they said no, what would you make of that?
It's tricky. If the zombie has lights on and a conscious awareness, then I would think they've seen my talk. And if and they were lucky enough to not believe in it. But otherwise, it's tough to say.
Right.
Yeah. I would concur. All right, Ollie asks, if the argument against free will relies on the physical attributes of cells, yet no one has created a cell in a lab, how can we say cells are determined?
Yeah, it's a good question.
There's no zombie deer. I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm gone.
There's a lot of things to be learned about the brain, especially in cellular biology. Consciousness is called the hard problem for a reason. It's a mystery and it's magic, and there's a lot there. But there's no reason to believe that free will could exist. That would involve cells doing things like choosing paths instead of just being functions of the biology around them. So yeah, granted, we don't know everything yet. We don't know everything about the cell. The cell is insanely complex, and maybe there's possibility there, but I'm skeptical. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if somebody made a cell in a lab, that'd be really cool. Yeah, I don't know how much I can add.
Some diehard mixed taste fans may remember when we had a talking robot last year. Yeah. Which is another rabbit hole we could go down. Maybe not now. Instead, we'll take this question from L-Dog, who asks, how would traditions of storytelling and journalism be different if good versus evil, character development, and quote unquote, overcoming all odds were not a part of our culture?
Yeah, that'd be great. I really think that'd be good. I think we have too few modes to tell stories and to get people's attention. Like, especially working in environmental journalism, like, I'm always kind of thinking about that, right? Maybe not always consciously, but like, what role is somebody or some source or something going to fill? I think it actually kind of explains why I end up going with something like Zombie Deer, because it like immediately gives this like narrative structure and set of tropes that people can kind of key into and understand. I think if we can think of like different ways to tell stories about stuff that are like complicated and fun and morally murky, like that's great. And a lot of my favorite piece of journalism like do that really well. So I don't know, like I don't think you can delete those things though. Like you kind of have to work around them. Like something else would come into that. Like that's just kind of the way I think people think is in terms of those like big, almost like fairy tale type stories.
How does your training as a clickbait journalist kind of play into that?
Yeah. I mean, let's see. So the clickbait journalism, I worked for a magazine called Modern Farmer. I had a few big hits. One is Cactus the New Kale? Huge. Well? The answer was no. So that was a big one. 10 animal hybrids you've never heard of. That one did really well. So I think in terms of like clickbait, it's just like coming to people with something that they're already interested in, kind of like inviting them in, which I still think is a good idea. I think Zombie Deer was a bad execution, but that idea, I really believe in like meeting people where they're at. And obviously I want them to work a little bit, but I also don't want them to be completely like lost and without a place to stand.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
All right, we're gonna go now to Dale's question. And Dale asks, even if we are all truly mechanicistic, I can't say that word, zombies, is free will a constructive illusion that should maybe be embraced?
That's a popular theory. The philosopher Daniel Dennett says that maybe free will doesn't exist, but people would be better off believing in it. And there have been some interesting studies on this. So recently a study was done where a group of college students were told that free will doesn't exist, and then they were given an exam, and the exam had some set up in a way that you could cheat on it if you wanted to. And more people cheated on the exam. because they thought free will didn't exist. But interestingly, if you split it up between men and women, the men cheated more and the women cheated less. So it's a mixed bag, believe me.
So
There's been very few studies.
When people believe free will doesn't exist in this limited sample, they are more inclined to behave badly.
In this one study,
Men,
Yeah.
thank you. Men are more inclined to behave badly in this one
Yeah.
limited study.
seems like it.
Wonder what college that was. All right. Anonymous asks, are we fated to zombie wolf if they eat zombie deer? Are we?
Yeah. Well,
I think I'm going.
yeah. What I've heard is no from scientists. If they eat zombie deer, that species barrier still holds for canines, so we should be good to go. It also holds for cougars and most other predators, which is good news. So we wouldn't have zombie wolves, which is generally, I think, a good thing. But we don't know how or if that might change. I think a really interesting thing to think about is, like, do prions have free will? And if prions, change over time or decide to change over time, which is a very weird process that people don't really understand yet, then maybe it could happen. Cougars, wolves, us, anything that eats deer and elk could start getting chronic wasting disease, which is what all these people are worried about.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Season 1
It's gross, yeah.
through 7. It doesn't end well. In any case, no matter how you slice that sentence. Matthew P. asks, journalistically, how can you hold someone accountable if free will doesn't exist?
I mean, do you believe in accountability at all?
So their laws can, scare people into possibly not doing certain actions, and so there's accountability in that sense that laws still make sense. I don't know if there's any journalistic law that could, I guess, slander or something, but so I believe in it somewhat, but at the same time, if someone does something they had no free will but to, it was written. And so it's kind of a moral luck situation where they were unlucky if they were imprisoned for something, so to speak.
Yeah. I think journalism a lot of times, though, tries to hold people accountable for things that they did not consciously decide to do, right? Like, really good journalism doesn't just hold people accountable, it holds systems accountable. And I think, thanks, guys. That's right. That one was free. And so I'm curious what you would think about that kind of accountability. Like, if we're trying to show people why the housing system doesn't work or why climate change is out of control, there might not be individual people who are to blame, but they're a part of institutions and they've made a long series of decisions over a long period of time that somehow needs to change.
Yeah, definitely agree. Human behavior can be changed, and there are things that need to be changed, and those responsible may not have had a choice but to do what they did, but the world will still be better if climate change is focused upon.
But how would you explain something like that happening? Like, if, like, passing a law, how does that work without free will? Some sort of collection of action.
Laws can, scare people into doing things
the
less.
Passage, not the enforcement, but like
the passage.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's funny to ask any question. If there's no free will, why do we do this? We do this because there's no free will. You had no choice but to do it. It's a funny kind of like paradox. Why do you wake up in the morning if there's no free will? I woke up. I did not wake up. It's a tricky kind of paradox there. So people are passing laws because their brains are complex and we have a complex society, but I can't explain it more than that. But
Well, Dale says that they, for one, choose to believe that we have no free will. So, thank you for that.
They had no choice but to choose to believe that there's
Yeah. Now, I had no choice but to read it, so the cycle continues. Ryan is also known as the hyphen, I think I should point out. Is Sam able to forgive himself for the zombie deer epidemic?
Just for the zombie deer thing, or like?
I mean, that's what the hyphen
Okay,
wants to know.
that's the hyphen. That's a loaded hyphen.
I think Ryan might be a wrestler.
Yeah, I can forgive myself for that. I think I did play some quotes from Matt Dunphy, but even he forgave me at a certain point.
That was my next question.
Yeah, like even he was like, you know what, it's fine. Like the fact that you like called me to talk about this, like it's really okay. And he even acknowledged that like him and all his other biologist buddies eventually kind of sat back and they were like, well, at least we're getting in front of people. Like, at least we get the opportunity to talk about this. And we don't know if we can really correct the record effectively, but, we can try. And we didn't even have that sort of opportunity or visibility before now. So that was nice to hear that, but he was still pissed. And he, definitely doesn't want you or me or anybody to call it zombie deer disease now. So it was a mistake, but I don't know. I understand why I did it, and I don't think the consequences were horrible.
You learned.
I don't. Yeah.
You laughed.
I didn't laugh, but
No.
in the scheme of things, it could have been way worse. Yeah.
Yep. All right. I think we have time for maybe one last question tonight. So let's see where this lands. Sean asks, does this concept of free will exist because a journalist was naming something? No.
Do you know who named free will?
It's a very old concept steeped in religion, but I think Spinoza was the first philosopher to talk about the idea that free will probably doesn't exist. Philosophers were broad terms those days.
Yeah.
Maybe he was a journalist also.
Wasn't Spinoza a rabbi too or something?
Yeah, it's steeped in Jewish tradition as well. Yeah.
I don't know, I'm Jewish, so
Yeah.
there's that.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, this. This has been a enlightening Q&A. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you both so much. All right. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sam. Now it's prize time. I love that. All right. Each week we give a prize to the person who asks the best or makes the best connection, asks the best question. And tonight, Charlie chose his favorite question, and the person who submitted it is going to receive...
They are going to receive 2 free tickets to a test audience performance of Theater of the Mind, which is an awesome new immersive experience that Off Center is premiering in just a couple of weeks. And you can be among the first to experience the show as we're fine-tuning in the final phase of the process. So, great prize. And Emmy here is going to deliver the envelope
All
to
right.
announce our winner.
Emmy, would you like to bring up the envelope?
All the way around the stage. Love it.
Extra drama. All right.
Sarah, will you read our winner?
Thank you very
Emmy.
much, Imogene. All right.
Oh, you may not be able to read it very well.
No, Charlie's going to have to read
The
it.
winner for tonight's prize is SP, who asked the question, is there any philosophical difference between the concept of the zombie and the concept of the human absent free will?
Those are good
Congratulations,
questions.
SP. Excellent connection.
I hope you like theater.
Please email programs@mcadenver.org to claim your prize.
Fantastic. All right, and now we're going to invite Franklin back to enlighten us with an original poem inspired by the talks that we all heard together tonight. So Franklin is an award-winning artist, an activist, and an educator. Please give a warm welcome to Franklin Cruz.
Well, thank you all so very much for having me. My name is Franklin Cruz. I'm the son of Maria and Gumer Cruz from Mexico, Chihuahua, Ignacio Zaragoza, if you know where that's at. If y'all want to follow me, y'all can always find me on Instagram under Franklin Cruz. And before I forget, can I have anyone in the audience who is willing record this? Because I'm a freestyle a poem, and I never remember what I say afterwards. And then afterwards, I'm like, that was actually something I probably want to record. So with that, thank you all so very much. Thank you to the two speakers. I had a cool idea while I was sitting there listening to the talk, so that's the idea I'm going for today. So I walked out in the woods because my body decided that today was the day I go hunting. Today was the day that my gut bacteria decided that I needed more protein. Today was the day my bones decided that we needed to just go outside and get vitamin D. Today was the day I decided to put the rifle against my shoulder, cock it, and look at the deer, and I decided to pause. The deer itself wasn't settled. The deer itself decided it wobbled, or maybe it didn't. The deer itself decided it was sick, or maybe it didn't. I thought about all my wildlife and forestry friends and how they told me about the zombie deer that are out there, how it's more humane to just put them down and bring in the head for research. This was the day I decided if I was going to be the executioner, or maybe it was the day that decided it for me. Maybe all my bacteria wanted this protein because somewhere inside of us we knew we had to be this executioner. Maybe the deer decided to walk in front of me because it thought I was the most compassionate executioner it could have had. Maybe it was just the river that pushed the deer towards my path. Maybe it was the wind that decided to pollinate these flowers so the deer comes right here. Maybe it was my own mental health crisis that I was having that day that decided it was the time for flowers, so we sat in that field long enough for the deer to be there. Maybe all of these decisions was something that I did or did not have a choice in. Same thing as its deer, unfortunate in its circumstance. This scenario which it definitely did not choose, how shitty it is to lose your memory. And whatever body that you have, imagine if all of a sudden you degenerated this will that we so much desire, the one that says, I get to choose to be a compassionate person, but am I as the executioner? I get to choose to be a compassionate hunter, but am I as this bystander who's come across this unfortunate animal? There's so much about our world that is undistinguished and unnamed, and free will is that Venn diagram middle space. Like, is this really my choice? Do I really have an option? At the end of the day, if I leave and this deer dies by someone else's hand, wouldn't it have become the same circumstance and the same ending if I just did it right here? So with this rifle against my shoulder, this breath in my body, whether decided upon me or not, I pulled the trigger. This deer went down. The scenario was over. And I did not know if I had a choice to begin with or not. Thank y'all.
That was really good. Thank you, Franklin. Thank you, Franklin. That was wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you to Brenton Zola, our guest curator for the summer. Thanks to you, Sarah, and to the whole MCA Denver team for making Mixtaste happen this summer.
Thanks to our amazing crew, Mike, Dele, Danny, and Alex. And thanks to you, our audience, for joining us tonight and all of the nights of Mixtaste. Please take a moment to fill out the survey that will appear on your phones right now. It really helps us out. And that's a wrap.
Good summer. Thank you, everyone.